Learning to become, learning to learn, learning to thrive, learning to flourish, learning to care.
It is now time to listen to our voices.
To prepare a better future.
Treat others and
the planet as you would wish to be treated.
Collaborating
and develop in partnership.
We have the capacity
to understand,
to take action, to take care of ourselves, others, and the planet.
And we want to invite you
to really work together
and collaborate so that we can have an impact now.
Welcome to Learning Planet Festival.
It can just get better.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pavel Luksha. I'm the facilitator today of this session dedicated to learning ecosystems. And we are here discussing what we probably could call the most important paradigm shift happening in education right now. Of course, in the last couple of decades, there were many claims about paradigm shifts, and I think they are all, so to say, playing part in this transition that we're discussing. Personalization of education, rise of different technological platform and digitalized education, use of AI, distributed models of learning, and so on. And of course, everything around the topic of skills for 21st century, future skills that made us adapted to transforming economies and transforming society. So indeed, we are in the moment where some kind of transition is happening. The old paradigm of education, what we sometimes call industrial paradigm, that was built around the idea of standardized education for standardized life and standardized economy, used to work really efficiently in late 19th and early 20th century, and helped in some regards create a society that managed to eradicate a lot of let's say millennia-old problems of humanity, famines, diseases, instabilities, and so on. So we are living probably more prosperous lives than before, but maybe not as a happy life as scholars often indicate. But also this paradigm has been criticized for dehumanizing human beings, for not recognizing personality in each of us, not recognizing the long-term path that each of us has to go through as a human being and becoming. And so the demand for a different model is really growing. And like I said, elements of this model have been already spurring and popping up in the last decades. But the idea that we need some kind of umbrella for this, some kind of different organizational approach or organizational paradigm has been increasingly proliferating the idea of decision makers, educators, and so on. So what can be this new paradigm? And the new paradigm can be something that will be much more organic, much more, that will probably be much more complex, that will recognize our individual pathways, our needs for growth, and will serve better this interconnected and complex world that we are stepping into. And so comes the idea of learning ecosystems, the idea of a new way of organizing human learning that will embrace all of spheres of human life, that will support lifelong learning trajectories, huge variety of forms of learning, and also will really build up on connections between us, engaging all kinds of learning providers and all kinds of learning types, learning forms into some kind of unified system. So learning ecosystems is as an idea, as a paradigm, already is getting onto the stage. Now, the discussion that we want to hold today is whether this paradigm really start to take roots, and whether it can really become a new a transition which will kind of support all the other transitions we're discussing. So we have a really great panel today of people who are practitioners, who are not only scholars but also doers, implementing this paradigm in life and trying to bridge the holistic learning, technology, traditional knowledge together in a comprehensive learning model that will serve all types of learners, all ages, and all types of needs. Let's discuss how this works. Let's discuss what we observe happening, what we think are challenges for the new paradigm. Should it become really as proliferated? Is it what's the future relationship between this paradigm and the existing industrial paradigm is going to be, and how we can practically start to implement it. So maybe I wanted to begin. I'm really glad that Valerie, you are here. Welcome to the panel. I'm really glad you managed to join. And my idea was to really begin with your contribution, because in some regard you are, I could say, the mother of this idea in education. You probably have been among the people that really brought this into education over a decade ago. And your work with Global Education Leaders Partnerships helped proliferate this concept around the globe. And you wrote a report together with World Innovation Summit in Education about a year ago on local learning ecosystems. So what do you see as the dynamics of learning ecosystems in the world? Do you think this indeed is a new paradigm, and where it's heading?
Thanks, Pavel, and hello, everybody. I'm really delighted to be a part of this. I'll try and keep my remarks brief just to kick things off. And thanks for your provocations as questions. First off, I absolutely do agree that it's a new paradigm, both in terms of the generosity and the breadth of its ambitions for learning, which are so more expansive than those that we usually come across, but also in the practical implications in terms of education becoming everybody's business and breaking out of the silos of educational institutions. And I guess if I start with that point, in terms of some of the obstacles that I see, the study that I did back in, 2018, 2019, we looked at a data set of about 50, and then we focused on 9 case studies. Your new report, Pavel, for which thank you very much, I've enjoyed it a great deal, has a bigger data set, and I think it's more informative in many ways. But for me, a big issue is whether we are capable of extending this paradigm, this concept, into the heartland of the schooling and the college systems, and that it does not become a kind of parallel system operating outside what states offer and mass education systems. And that would be very, very easy to happen. It just becomes a kind of a nice to have niche little kind of project that is happening in various parts of the world. I mean, I think you talk about mother of the movement. I would say the mother of the movement in many ways is LRNG in Chicago and what they tried to do. And because it didn't succeed, hasn't succeeded yet in really involving the schooling system. And it's a danger because the schooling system can suck it back into the old paradigm. But if you leave it out, you become a parallel, you become entirely dependent on philanthropic funding. You don't impact what the major system is trying to do, and you don't reach the mass of students. So I think that's enormously important. And so added to that, if I'm right, and if anybody, I see a couple of nods around the screens, but if that's right, then we have to acknowledge too what we haven't touched on yet, which is the kick that COVID has given to the mass education systems, the conventional institutions, how it's thrown them back in many ways. You could say it's advanced what they're doing because they've been required to integrate technology much more profoundly. Okay, but truthfully, if you talk to leaders and workers in most of the schools which are, currently working at distance, they're just desperate to get back to the old normality. That is their reality. They are desperate to get students back into classrooms. And the idea of them reaching out, forming the truly diverse networks and partnerships that you need to make ecosystems a reality is like light years away from their heads obsessions at the moment. So I regard these as big issues. Others may not, but I just think that if we continue to develop this idea, rich as it is, expansive as it is, separate from what mass systems are doing, state-funded systems are doing, it will just disappear. That's the starting point.
Great point, thank you. And I'm thinking about the work that a very interesting organization, Hollow IQ, is doing on the mapping different scenarios. They actually are talking about this polarization that is happening between what they call robo-education, really digitally enhanced AI-focused education versus peer-to-peer distributed human-centered. And indeed, that polarization is obvious both on the regional and global scale. But you made this interesting point about involvement of schools, and I wanted to actually transfer to Jordi Diaz-Gibson, who also does very systemic research on learning ecosystems. But really, Jordi, you are working with schools. You are exactly creating tools that Valerie was talking about, how to engage educators in school level, how to commit them, how to show them the benefit of this paradigm, and how to make schools central in this process, how they can become what you call weavers of ecosystem. Can you talk more about this work, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Pavel. So I really share the challenge that Valerie just said as one of the backbones of enhancing and shifting these educational paradigms. So the question now is, how can we bring in schools to be weavers or to be active on this shift, right? So I think this is one of the targets of the work that we're doing with the NetEdu project, where we are researchers and school leaders and district leaders and diverse educators that are trying to collaborate in order to weave all this shift together. So what we have seen also in our research and in our work in the field and in schools is if we're not able to grow the paradigm from inside, not only inside schools, but from inside the mindsets of the professionals that are doing the work. So it's going to be very difficult to spread and to reinforce the paradigm. So in this sense, one of our big goals is to create a big school network with schools that are using our tools. Our tools, one of the tools that we're using with schools is the School Weavers tool, and we are using it in 20 countries now, testing it. At the end, this is just a model of how a learning ecosystem in a school can evolve, and we have co-created that with researchers from around the world and also school leaders from around the world. And we did a second stage of testing in the schools, and now we build an online tool where leaders from schools in many diverse countries can log in and can start a transformational process. And this transformational process goes by shifting this focus, not only on the pressure of standardization, but on the focus of relationships that is in the core of ecosystemic growth. So on caring relationships as an engine of transformation. So thinking about how students can care more about each other, how teachers can care about students, and students care about teachers, and teachers care about parents, and parents care about. So thinking about the quality of the relationships, but also the quantity, with this idea that Pavel shared of the ecosystemic growth. So thinking, how can we enhance in our school communities the learning opportunities and enhance at the same time well-being and equity for all. So what we're doing is we are trying to support leaders to enact and start rethinking their relationships and trying to gathering informed data around how their own ecosystem is evolving, and trying to take decisions and to learn from one another in this network of schools in how to really put this into action. So I would say very briefly, this will be my response. So I agree, schools are key actors on this change. And a second thing is not only about schools. This is a change that must grow from all levels. And we need this coherence and leaders from all levels to enact this systemic change.
Thank you very much. Valerie, you wanted to comment?
Yeah,
something?
I know there's a lot of people that are ready to talk, so I feel very bad about jumping back in. But just in terms of the kind of the scope of our debate, Jordi, I'm really, really interested in your work. But for me, the heart of the notion of an ecosystem is that it's a diversity of different kind of players and organizations. So I'm working with a lot of school leaders who are within their own school trying to effect a paradigm shift, which is about relationships, which is about the purpose of education and so forth. But it remains a kind of, you know, it remains within the silo of the education institution. And it seems to me that the problem that I was pointing to was that to create a real ecosystem, which is diverse partners, really liberating the assets of a community, the creative, the cultural, the business, the health, the military, the whoever the hell, you know, everybody involved in education is a very different enterprise. So I suppose I'm trying to get our definitional terms agree, because if we're still talking about what can happen within the school, all those objectives are great, but for me, that's not an ecosystem. And I've worked with networks of schools all my life, you know, trying to attack those issues, but they remain within their own sort of single source system rather than genuinely ecostemic. I just wanted to chuck that in, and I will shut up now.
Well, thank you very much, Valerie, because I think your statement is very timely. I wanted to emphasize that a lot of people on this panel are actually not exactly working with schools. They approach this from a more, let's say, holistic perspective. And I think that creates a very nice segue into next group of speakers. So we have a number of people here who work with from the city perspective, from the holistic land development perspective, introduction of sustainable development goals, introduction of entrepreneurs in the area, a connection with businesses and demand for new types of skill for a really very rapidly changing economy. So that's where we probably all agree there exists this demand for a different type of paradigm that would make this connected. So actually, let me invite some of the contributors, and maybe we could start with the work that Eloise is doing with Urban Monde, and I understand that your work is spread across Europe and Africa, and you are doing exactly that kind of connection between multiple stakeholders for the holistic development of territories.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pavel, and thank you for the crew and everybody to invited Urban Monde and me particularly in this session. And to be honest, I was very surprised when I received the invitation, because I didn't know that what we are doing was part of a learning ecosystem. So I'm very happy to speak about something that we are probably not really aware that it's a learning ecosystem, but maybe the discussion, and also after like some reading and discussion with colleagues that maybe we are one and maybe not, but maybe we are just an experiences of different experiences about how we can learn and work on the field. So just I will share very quickly what Urban Monde is doing, and also what we are doing in the Pépinière Urbaine program. So we call it Pépinière Urbaine in French. In English, we try to call like Urban Fabric Initiative, Urban Incubator. We don't really know yet the right term in English. So I will just jump on one on the French and English terms. And so Urban Monde is it's a French and Swiss NGOs, which is part of this program, the Pépinière Urbaine, and financed by AFD. And so it's so what Urban Monde is doing. So very quickly, we are working on the international cooperation by supporting group of vulnerable inhabitants in their implementation of collaborative housing. And we're doing peer learning experience by facilitating the Cohabitat network that is network of community-led housing organizations and their allies who work together to secure housing through collective, non-speculative, and people-led solutions. And we also provide technical support to local stakeholders, and we promote tools and financial mechanisms and solidarity between group of inhabitants. How do we deal with learning ecosystem in Urbamonde? I think it's the question that I just had to myself last week, and but that was very interesting. And also, I think we leave room for experimentation. We accepting the right to fail. We leading by example some tools and resources. And when I say we, it's not only Urbamonde, it's Urbamonde with a lot of partners that we have, and particularly like group of inhabitants when we are working on the ground in Africa, in Nicaragua, so in Latin America, in Asia, and in Africa. And we build alliances with academic and research world to probably construct knowledge and collective intelligence. And we, in French, we call about like éducation populaire. So maybe we can say like community-based education. And we really trust in that. We really think it's very important in our work in Urbamonde that we are not the one who know. We learn every time from the allies, from the people when we are working on the ground, on the field, and also with the students that we are working in university, in Europe or anywhere. So we are really focused on the community-based education. I think it's something very like important in our way that we are doing our job on the ground. So very quickly, also maybe on the what the Pépinière Urbaine, the urban incubator is. So it's a program launched by AFD in 2018 to address the gap between the large-scale project and the user and resident urban spaces. The idea is to say that usually it's kind of like laboratories of citizen initiative, and it's so AFD is most of the time financing like infrastructure with governmental partners, and how between this gap of time of doing the project, and we can learn from the collective, the ground makers, people, and how we can also during this period having like a very frugal, tactical, participatory, temporary urban planning. I don't know. We have a lot of vocabulary about this practice, and how this kind of project that fits. It's like multi-stakeholder project in a country. So we have for the moment 3 experiences. So one is in Burkina Faso, in Ouagadougou, in Tunisia, in Senegal, Dakar, and one in Abidjan, in Côte d'Ivoire. So this is like how we can support city stakeholders to co-design, to co-construct urban macro projects in parallel of a big infrastructure project in public spaces using innovative approach, inclusive, participatory, and agile methodology. So the program is, and I will stop after that just to explain. It's like very, so we have 3 components on the big program financed by AFD. It's a funding mechanism. There are network on this urban fabric project, and like a research and assessment component. Urbamonde with different partners, Le Gret, Urbacen, who is based in Senegal, and the Cabanon Vertical, who is based in Marseille, are part of the network consortium. And we are trying to develop an international network of the partners who are working on those urban innovation approaches, urban fabrics initiative, and using the learning project, how we can share all of the projects that Pépinière Urbaine in the different cities are making on the floor. So, and on the ground. And so very quickly, And I think the pépinière urbaine, it's not what I said at the beginning. I think it's an informal, for the moment, ecosystem, learning ecosystem. We are not aware that we have probably one. And it's a form of learning that is not really formalized. And it's learning to act in relation to territorial challenges. So the NGOs on the field work by doing, by cooperation, by experimentation in situ. It's also the territorialization of the experience. It's very localized, like sometimes very close to the project, and it's also creating a learning community. So we start having with the diversity of the stakeholders that we have on the field, NGOs, incubators, universities, research labs, local experts, civil society, local government, ministries, the financial partners. All of these persons are part of this network, and we probably don't know really that for the moment we are learning from each other, but we are definitely starting having mentorship program between different pépinières urbaines in different fields. So I will just stop here, and I can share more concrete experience later.
Thank you very much, Alois. I cannot help but think about this famous playwright by Molière, Bourgeois Dead Gentleman, the guy who discovered that he was speaking prose for 40 years without knowing it. And that sort of tells me about the phenomenon of learning ecosystem. I think there are many more learning ecosystems happening in the world than we do really recognize. And for example, one of the cases or practical ecosystem that I've been working with for the last 5 years in St. Petersburg, and Polygraph Marsh, and it's featured in Valerie's report. When I met the person who was creating it, he didn't know that he was doing a learning ecosystem. And actually, once he recognized that it was what he was doing was a learning ecosystem, he started to amplify it. And really the dynamic started to change. So he really started to more consciously build up all types of partnerships and focus on human learning and holistic human learning that will go through multiple stages from young people to adults in his learning ecosystem, because he started to recognize that it is a learning ecosystem. So thank you very much for your description and really recognizing that what you are doing is exactly that. You are doing that informal, local, community of different groups of learners weaving together like a holistic development of the territory, and of course with support from international institutions and so on, without recognizing that maybe you are the one. So this is, to me, also indicates that one of the types of the role, the work that we need to do is to support people like you, connect you with education, or to kind of show that what you are doing is most relevant for education, because maybe there is very little recognition that these type of activities need to start building bridges with each other. Thank you very much, Alois.
Thank you.
And yeah, we have quite a few colleagues working with or operating from Africa. And I would be very interested to get the contribution of Yannick. Yannick, we've been trying to meet for quite a long time with you. I'm glad we are meeting now in this panel. And you are doing some amazing work in Africa. And one of the things you are doing is bridging the technological and highly advanced new models of education with traditional models of learning. Where do you see yourselves as a learning ecosystem in making, and how do you see this paradigm? If it works for Africa, does it spread in Africa? What's your perspective?
Thank you, Pavel. That's a really great question. Yes, just some quick words about myself and Aloha before addressing your question. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here to be in the discussion, because I do believe that's really timely to have this kind of discussions. Yes, I'm Yannick from Kabako Academies, and we are building a Pan-African learning platform for holistic tech education. What we really believe is that we need to design learning experiences which might help young people to mediate the gap between local knowledge and what we can call high-tech knowledge, like AI and all these kind of advanced technologies. And in order to mediate that gap, we believe that we need to train people, we need to learn how to understand complex systems. We need to turn our attention towards new types of knowledge. For example, visual knowledge, embodied knowledge, which are still excluded from the classical education. And this is even more important in the African context, because many local way of knowing, many local way of knowledge have been excluded. We know the history, we know the legacy, and so on. And this type of knowledge have been excluded. And we really believe that today, if we want to mediate that gap and to build inclusive societies, we need to address that today. And that's
I think Yannick goes on mute, right?
I think he lost connection. It happened to him earlier.
Let's wait for 20 seconds.
In new type, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to educate a child, to educate someone. And we really take that literally. And we, for example, work with the local communities. So because we believe that you don't need to be to have a master's degree or a PhD to be an expert in something. So we all have knowledge to share, and we work with the informal sector. We also work with the formal sector, with companies, with institutions, and so on. So we really see ourselves building a multi-stakeholder type of learning institutions. Yes. And our hope is, of course, that we might be able to advance this idea with other partners. Like that's the reason why, and that's why I'm so happy that so many people, for example, in this panel right now, working on the same type of problems, because we believe that we need to advance this idea of learning in a holistic way. And maybe I will jump back to one of your first point, Pavel, if you allow me to do that. In the introductory statement of yours, you addressed the issue that globalization has been working more or less for us. Well, I want to challenge that idea. I doubt if you can say that this unilateral globalization we have been experiencing in the last decade work for people like me, for example. I will doubt that globalization work for me and for people like myself, because it's also unilateral. And the issue now is, how do we escape this unilateral globalization and to design new types of societies, new types of exchanges. And our response to that is to say, maybe we can design, because nowadays when you talk about knowledge transfer, for example, when I say knowledge transfer, everyone says, okay, it's from the north to the south. But we can also have knowledge transfer from the south to the north, right? There are still many ways of knowing which are being exploited, and that's why we try to. That's what the discussion we are trying to get, right? So I will stop here, and of course, I would be more than happy to jump again in discussion if you want me to explain anything or to give more details.
Yes, Yannick, because I understand you're working on primarily developing skills for the transforming economy. So you're working quite a lot with future skills or future-oriented skills, really highly advanced for the distributed economy, for its fourth industrial revolution, and really engaging project-based learning quite a bit. We're trying also to solve local problems with groups of your learners. Is that correct? So you kind of bring in that agenda as part of your story.
Yeah. So thank you so much for adding that, Pavel. Yes, we work only with problem-based learning. So only every people in our learning campus is solving a problem, and this is actually when I talk to when we talk to people in the nowadays, and we present Kabaku, it's okay. We do our methodology is problem-based. It sounds so innovative because it's our most innovative schools nowadays. They will do problem-based learning, but for us, the inspiration was actually traditional ways of learning in Africa. Okay, so it's not because we have read the state of the art pedagogical models and say, okay, problem-based learning so is the new kid on the block. No, our inspiration is the traditional way of learning. The traditional ways of learning in most African societies were problem-based, and also they were ecosystemic. So people will learn not only, for example, how to construct tools for agriculture, but they will learn also what's the meaning of the tools in ecosystemic thinking. So they will learn, for example, okay, how should the peasant use my tools? So it was really ecosystemic. It was that's the reason why this again the saying it takes a village. That was really the idea, and that's what we are trying to implement. So nowadays it sounds like modern. It sounds like okay, we are working along the line of the state of the art pedagogical research or learning research, but our main experience is mostly like these traditional ways of doing. Just to be clear, we are not saying that tradition or culture is the best. No, that's not what I'm saying. Just to be clear, we are not saying that we need to go back to any type of romanticized traditions or past. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what we are trying to do is actually to give a chance to different types of knowledge to emerge. And recently, just see this example, and then I give the floor back. Leave the floor back. Recently, I was talking to a journalist, and the question was, she asked me a question about the literacy. In Mali, for example, the literate adult are less than 50% of the population. So how do you do that? How do you deal with that? And my answer was like, okay, what is literacy? For example, I'll give you an example. Some of you might know the African fabrics, African textiles, which are famous. There are many African textiles which are quite famous. And most of the time on these African textiles, you will see some symbols, some characters and so on. And those characters is writing. Some people can read it. And I'm a PhD, I have a PhD, but I cannot read that. So for them, I am not literate. So, and those people, they might be able to read that, and they might not even have like a high school diploma, but they are in this writing system, they are more literate than myself in my PhD. So that's just another example to make sure, to illustrate the need to give a voice to different type of knowledge.
Thank you. Absolutely amazing. And I strongly believe in this connection between local knowledge and local tradition, and really remembering the ancient, what we can call ancient wisdom, very ancient tradition of tribes, the territories, indigenous populations, connecting it with the need of 21st century. By the way, Valerie and her group and the Global Education Leaders Partnership a few years ago organized a very interesting event in New Zealand. And I was absolutely amazed to see how traditional knowledge of Maori was brought into schools, and they probably created some of the most advanced 21st century holistic models of learning by integrating traditional Maori knowledge and very modern global pedagogies. So yeah, I think that's the right pathway to go for us to really integrate that, instead of saying there is one paradigm or another. And that's probably also the beauty of learning ecosystem, that allows us to integrate voices rather than disconnect them and separate people from the learning narrative. Yeah, but also going to, Valerie, you wanted to comment something? No, okay. I wanted to maybe highlight one thing that, Yannick, I think is happening in your project, and that's I agree that this kind of being rooted in the tradition and in the problems and context, the local context, is important. But you also kind of are working with that global transition and the idea of future skills. And so I'm thinking that this can also be a very important driver of the change, and really something that creates demand for new models of learning. So I wanted to transfer to Kate Lashkarova, who does a lot of work actually from the side of World Skills Global Movement to bring this idea of future skills and really help create the demand for new types of learning. What do you see as a dynamic happening in this space? And do you see actually that because of the idea of future skills, the fourth industrial revolution, we really have a growing demand for new models of education coming up?
Thank you, Pavel. Well, while listening my colleagues, I cannot really stop thinking about this, like almost battle happening between standardization and uniqueness, globally on all levels of education. Partly this is something that Valerie said, and while I was listening to her, I remember that in Russia we have the traditional, I would say, issues of the kind of traditional management patterns, which usually specialists call mobilization, because we do not like to make things, like steady. We just like to mobilize in the very last moment and to make everything kind of happening. Relocalization of the resources instead of attracting the new one. And the third pattern is actually creating the parallel management structures, when instead of changing the existing one, we start creating the parallel structures, because in the existing one, and in case of the educational system, this is actually models when all of the money and resources are, like the big standard educational institutions. But then, and of course, yeah, we have this amazing, beautiful project with the Pavel about the future skills, with the research and innovative competitions, and new approaches to the green skills and the soft skills and the metal skills and the emotional intelligence and so on and so on. But then I start thinking that actually these two worlds somehow need to find peace with each other, because there are advantages within the standardized, like standard approach as well. And in the World Skills, we know it like really well, because for those who do not know, the World Skills is a global non-for-profit organization. We exist in the 80 countries. So far, it's 1 million young people. So we have the kind of our core activity is the competition within the skills. Usually we call it, not we, but other people call it the Olympic Games within the skills. So the best of the best on the national level, regional level, college level, city level compete in their skills. It can be electronics, it can be mechatronics, Internet of Things, landscape gardening, and so on and so on. Then the best going to the national level and then into the international level. So our next global event going to be in Shanghai in 2022. And so the system of the kind of bringing inspiration to the young people and the passion within the skills possible only because of the standards. So the standards are actually the core of the world skills, because we have more than 800 criteria for each skill. We have a bunch of global industrial partners such as Samsung and Siemens and Autodesk and so on. It's also all global company with the standards, which expect the same quality of the products and services worldwide. So that's why they're interested into the, I would say, equal level of really kind of high advanced skill in the different countries. So they support that program's development in these countries, and so on and so on. So all the system is really standardized, but so the standard of the core. And also we have a lot of initiatives in Africa. We have a bunch of African countries. We have the special branch for World Skills Africa. And again, it's also working because we have the standards. But what we are trying to do at the same time, which Pavel was a part of, let's say in Kazan, in the Global World Skills Competition, we created the special zone for the future skills. It was for the 10,000 square meters compared to the 250 square meters for the rest of the event for the classical skills. So my question here is how to bring this innovative learning ecosystem approaches to this to this mass system, because we cannot only use kind of personal and like really a crafted approach when we are working with the millions and millions of people and we have to manage the system. My final point here would be that for instance, last year in Russia, we created a program to retrain 110,000 people who suffered from the COVID, who lost their jobs, to kind of give them fast skill with which they can find their new role, new place on the labor market. Again, what was the pattern for this? Of course, it was a classical standardized VET approach. At the same time, myself and Pavel made this project the same year, kind of about the future skills, how the future skills for the next decade gonna look like. And there are a bunch of really beautiful personalized ideas there. So our kind of answer to this supposed to be something that we call mass uniqueness approach, when you can use the best from the mass standardized training, so keep these numbers and keep these outcomes in inputs to the economy that we are that we have to provide, but provide this also unique educational pathways and to learn the best from the educational learning system ecosystems approach. So for me, this would be the main challenge and the main task for myself and for our team, how to bring these worlds together, closer to each other. Thank you, Pavel.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate, and thank you for highlighting the challenge indeed. I cannot help but think about the idea that on one hand, for a global civilization, we need to kind of keep certain rhythms, so to say, some kind of, yes, I really like the idea of mass uniqueness as maybe that big transition that could occur over the next decade. And really, maybe that is a big inspiration for us, that we really don't need to hold these contradictions anymore, don't need to battle anymore between the, let's say, the industrial versus the whatever personalized paradigm, because with new technologies, new approaches, we can keep these, let's say, ideas integrating us while moving ahead with new approaches. And yeah, I'm also thinking about the role that maybe new rhythms are playing and new goals, like for example, sustainable development goals start to play in in our society as a kind of integrating a new integrating framework for the development of humankind. So Isadora, I can see you're saying there is a parallel with what you observe for learning ecosystems in Africa, and with your work with entrepreneurs in Africa that bring innovations in education. What is your perspective of this?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, what we see in Africa, well, in Digital Africa, what we do is our vision is that it's very important to, in order to foster inclusive development, to work with digital innovation made in Africa and from Africa. So I cannot agree more with Yannick when he was saying that there's lots of inspiration to find in Africa, and the way African entrepreneurs, because we are working with tech entrepreneurs in Digital Africa, the way we can be inspired by them, by the fact that they would have very naturally, they would develop a learning approach where it's peer-based approach and it's problem solve and it's very grounded approach. I don't want to be too long on what we're doing, but what we're trying to do is what we see is we're trying to build an ecosystem in order to enable tech entrepreneurs and equip African tech entrepreneurs with everything they need in order to scale up, because we are convinced that what is created here in the continent can inspire the world. So we want to equip them and then connect them to other ecosystems. Why are we working on a holistic approach and ecosystem? Because when it comes to entrepreneurship, you need ideas, you need skills, you need funds, and you definitely need an ecosystem and regulatory scheme that is favorable to your activities. So I agree with Valérie when she said that when we're talking about ecosystem, it needs that we have different stakeholders. And for us, the key is building trust. Because of course, on our hands, when what we do is we really focus on the needs of the entrepreneurs and how can these entrepreneurs can scale up their ideas and businesses and have a real effect on the real economy, because we really want the entrepreneurs that we support to have an impact on the real economy, so to be really grounded on the real life and real issues. And what we see is between entrepreneurs, investors, or regulatory authorities, we need to build somehow a common language. So Kate, you were talking about all the referentials and all the things that you are putting into place. For us, the key is sharing the same kind of languages and understand the needs and expectations of all stakeholders in order to be able to build trust and get a kind of a scheme that is understandable and reachable by everyone. So for us, it's really key and doing this, what we're trying to do is be as transparent as possible. So we are working, for example, we have a program named Digital Skills for Africa. The idea of this program is to, we see that startups lack and find, they experience roadblocks in hiring and finding the right skills to be able to scale up their businesses. So what we want to do is we are building a skill scheme based on the needs expressed by the entrepreneurs. So we see what skills are needed in order to, so it's the skills of the future in a way, because it's a tech, they are tech entrepreneurs, but the idea is to have a clear, it's tech, but it's not only tech, it's also business-like or soft skills. So what exactly do you need to be able to achieve your scale up and have your business growing so that it can have a real effect on the economy, and then make sure that this schemes is linked to what exists in terms of educational capacities. So link it with and make a partnership with training providers and provide scholarships to learners, and then make sure that these people that are trained in learning providers can be hired in the startups. So make sure that we have a circle approach and that we don't lose anyone on the cycle, and that make sure that we have the trust, have the same language, and that we share the same objectives, that we agree on the objectives that we are trying to jointly fulfill. And I shared with you a study that we had just when I was at AD, so that was my previous life, but still we were contributors at Digital Africa. We made, and I thank Eloise and Yannick because they were part of the study. Thank you for that. And I totally agree with what Eloise was saying, because we had with partners, we conduct a study to try and understand. In Africa, we were seeing that these learning ecosystems were blooming. And our feeling, our intuition is that there were lots of initiatives blooming without knowing that they were learning ecosystems. So that's why I really appreciate the testimony of Eloise, because it's really what happens, is that what we see is that there's a lot of inspiration in Africa. And thank you, Yannick, again, because for me, you demonstrate this very strongly. The fact that because it's problem solved, it's less like in theory, it's something that is alive and that is living, and it's experiencing. That's what we see. And we want to understand what was going on in the continent, and if they were like a typology, or if there is something that is, and most of the time it's done without knowing. So you don't really have a method, you don't really have a way to go. And the idea is, how do we scale massively this kind of initiatives, because we see that it's a trend, it's something that is really here to stay, and the schools are taking, and the COVID had an impact on this, of course, because the schools had to find other ways to get the students on board, and I'm going to finish on this, but what I find interesting is at the beginning the study was not named learning ecosystem in Africa, understanding learning ecosystem in Africa. It was more like, how do we create learning territories? And the terminology ecosystem was like jointly adopted by the different stakeholders that we studied, because they said what we want to create is ecosystem. So what we want to be inclusive. So we want to work on objective that we want to fulfill together. So let's be clear on the mission, on the vision, on the objective that we want to achieve, and then we'll find the how. So the important thing is agreeing on the why. Why are we doing this? How do we share the same purpose? And then how do we bring up a method that is very locally efficient? So it has to be rooted in local practice, methods, and habits in a way. And then so that's what I find very interesting, is to see that the fact that you have to agree on the objective, build trust, and the trust is everything, because if you agree on the mission and the trust, then you know that you're going to make some mistakes, or sometimes it's going to be difficult, because we know it's a journey, so it won't be like an easy one. But still, if you have the same purpose at heart, then it becomes doable. The how, you will find the how.
Thank you, Isadora. And I can see that your remarks on building trust really sparkled the discussion between speakers here in the chat. And Valerie has indicated that trust is a fundamental glue, but it's so difficult to build it. And then I can see that Jordi supported this and said that it's crucial for cultivating ecosystem, and really is a foundation of the model that NetEdu is using. And then Kate and Jordi discussed that there is a risk that trust can inevitably be replaced by rules when practices scale up. So I actually wanted to kind of feed it back to you and ask for your opinion about this. How do we maintain trust when scaling up, and how do we ensure that there is adequate funding and accountability models? And of course, in Africa being such an innovative zone at the moment, probably there are also opportunities for building up something that maybe in other regions institutions will be resisting, but here there is an opportunity to really start creating something new.
Well, I'll say a few words. Thank you for that. And then I see that Yannick wants to speak, and I'm sure he has very interesting things to share. But on our view, the key point is alignment, is transparency. So, and again, is agreeing on the mission, on the purpose, and then it's ethics in the way that, you share the same purpose. And then you have to have a perfect alignment on what you say that you want to do and what you're actually doing. So for me, it's key. It's really having working on this alignment. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that rules are fine. And yes, we need rules if we want to scale up. But we know that rules are here to be changed because, when you practice, and rules are very difficult to change. But if you agree on the purpose and the ethics, that's what we see. Like creating spaces, to everything has to be said. And again, for me, it's really alignment. That's what we see is every decision or every rule has to serve the purpose, or it's not a efficient rule, so it doesn't have to stay. It doesn't have to stand, and it's okay to be mistaken, but it's not okay to be disaligned. I think that's what we see is really working on this alignment. And Yannick, I don't know if you would agree. I don't know, but that's what we see on the ground.
Let's make short round of comments because we have one more speaker remaining for the first round. So please, Yannick, brief comment from you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Pavel. So thank you so much, Isadora, for this explanation about the issue of tech skills and tech entrepreneurship on the African continent. So I just wanted to give a quick comment about how we understand or how we see the tension of scale, which we just discussed. Well, at Kabaku, we believe that maybe we need to rethink our conception of economic institution, of economic organization. And we say that we train people in small scale economics. So, and if we look at the issue from the perspective of setting up small scale decentralized structure, this is how we maybe can lessen the tension of building up massive large scale institutions. And this is for those of you who are interested in it, you maybe can read about the history of the internet. Actually, the internet was designed for being a small scale and decentralized venture. And yes, a capitalistic idea then led to the emergence of one large scale, one big internet. And we are going to, and our inspiration is actually small scale, because in the African context, we don't have the structure, the infrastructure for building up large scale based industrialization. And we believe that we don't even need that, because we all know large scale based industrialization, those are the ideas from the early capitalism. Nowadays, we have the structure, we have the ideas, we have the knowledge how to build a small scale bottom-up society, and that's where we try to go with our learning model. Thank you, Pavel, and thank you, Isadora, for raising that up.
Thank you. Let's keep some of this passion for the second round, because I think we need to discuss really the hindrances, and especially the hindrances in scaling up the approach. I wanted to give opportunity also to one more speaker to share his opinion. Francois Gray, you are doing an amazing work of building up citizen science all over the world, and especially in Asia, for sustainable development goals. And in fact, as I understand, you also are cultivating learning ecosystems, intentional learning ecosystems that also kind of take this overarching purpose of transforming our society in alignment with sustainable development goals. So what's your perspective of this discussion?
So Pavel, thanks very much. Fascinating discussion, so much to say, but I'm going to circle back to what Valerie said at the beginning to challenge us, which is, I'm here because I believe in these learning ecosystems. But I'm part of the so-called industrial education system, as you put it, Pavel, the traditional one. I'm in a university that's 450 years old, University of Geneva. And just to give you, one more thought is that university was created before the industrial era. It was created because of a religious prerogative at that time. So we have to remember that the system of education has many deep roots, and we can't just cut them, right? We have to recognize them and build on them. And I think what Valerie is challenging us to do is to make sure that we don't end up in an echo chamber where we sort of all agree that we should have these new systems, but we don't know, why the main existing systems would adopt them. So I'm going to say something, and I'm going to share a picture, if I may. I'm going to try to, and if it doesn't work, I'll tell you in words. So you should be seeing a picture of a family, Swiss family. So I'm based in Geneva. This is a Swiss family around the turn of the century, not the 21st century, but the 20th century. And the reason I'm showing you this is because the young boy in the middle is actually Jean Piaget. And some of you may know him as the founder of the field of education of youth, the psychology of learning for young people. He said something. He was a professor at University of Geneva for 50 years. He was also the director of the International Bureau of Education, which later became UNESCO. And he has this great quote, which I think we can all agree with, principal goal of education, creating people who can solve problems, not simply repeat the knowledge that other generations have learned. Nothing that we can disagree with here, but this is 60 years ago and things have not changed all that much. So how are we going to live up to the expectations here of joining systems? So I'm just going to shift here to a completely different context. I mean, we've talked about Africa and Russia. There's so many things happening around the world. Shifting to China. So I've worked many years in China. I've worked with my colleagues at CRI, with Tsinghua University. And you can probably see in the middle there, François Tadé in the background. And we're listening here to the first results from a first ever hackathon at Tsinghua University, top university in China, about better ways for students to learn. Okay, that was the hackathon topic. And the student at the front is presenting her project from this hackathon. And the man in the white shirt is the president of Tsinghua University at that time. And the reason he's looking puzzled or a bit shocked is because the student is saying, well, our best idea is how do you replace boring teachers with information on the internet? So the project was called Tao Ke, how to skip class. So here we are at the top university in China, the best students, the crème de la crème are chosen. And the first thing that a young student thinks about is how to replace the teachers in the university. And I think there was a shock there in the room to realize how much the young people really are keen to find other ways to learn. And if there is a way to connect learning ecosystems, ultimately, I think it's through these young people and through the shock that they induce on leaders of the traditional industrial system. Now, I'm just going to give a word of warning. I mean, we've been here before. I think we all remember some years ago when everybody said MOOCs are going to change the world. They're going to destroy the traditional system. And it didn't happen. What happened actually is MOOCs essentially got co-opted by the traditional system. Universities now make good money out of MOOCs. So I'm just going to end my comments here and stop sharing so we can all see each other again with a thought about Valerie's challenge to us. If these learning ecosystems are going to have to make sense they're going to have to connect with the traditional system. What is the key feature of the traditional system that keeps young people, like that young woman, in them? Well, why is she there if she's so frustrated with it? The reason is she needs credits from that university to make her way in life, right? If she gets a degree from that university by following courses, she can go forward in her life. I mean, that's why her parents wanted her to go to that university. And let's not underestimate the role of parents in all this as well. So I think that, you know, we have to think about the credit system. These ecosystems will make sense. They'll be powerful if there is a, you know, a real sense that by doing things differently, you can still earn credits, you can still achieve your goals. And credit is a very general concept here. I'm not talking about, say, ECTS credits. I'm talking about generally what people see as valuable in their digital portfolios and so on, what people who are hiring, for example, with Digital Africa, I'm sure this is an issue, what people who are hiring see as valuable in the portfolios of young people in terms of their experience. So I think this is where we need to be looking, is at the credit system that could allow us to connect and have a healthy symbiosis with the existing system. Thanks.
Well, thank you. It's a great point, and I think a very nice segue to the second round of our conversation. We really have just maybe around 20 minutes remaining, but I think this will be a fruitful second round. I wanted to highlight there is a famous quote by an architect and system thinker, Buckminster Fuller, who said, you never change things by fighting against the existing reality. To change something, create a new model that makes the old model obsolete. So really, I think we should not be in this idea of combating the old industrial paradigm versus the new paradigm. The idea is, how do we integrate? How do we build up? As you say, Francois, we have indeed many roots, and the roots go really deep in our society. Indeed, the system has roots in pre-industrial era. Then it has the industrial layer on top of it. Then ecosystemic layer probably should not be something that replaces, but rather, and it's fine that MOOCs are getting integrated in the system, as they are also creating one of the layers. And probably we are talking about a more complex paradigm, which should not be fighting against the existing paradigm, but should be more inclusive and allow for the old traditional model, but allow for many additional, let's sort of say, pathways in the system. So how do we create it? The idea of integrating the mass uniqueness, probably that idea that Valerie suggested can be the overarching topic. What do you think, Valerie? Is it?
Oh, there's so many points that people have made. I'd really like to try to pull them together in some. I don't know if I can do this coherently, but starting with Francois, a few points from his remarks. I just want to say on Piaget, you know, I think we need to be wary of that remark about the capacity to do new things. It's like I'm often confronted by teachers who say, what's the purpose? Valerie, you keep going about what's the purpose of schools? Well, the whole purpose of schools is just learning. Our business is learning, full stop. And I say, no, it's not. Because there's one test case for me always. Think about the Nazis. Think about what fantastic learners and problem solvers they were, and what new things they learned to do. And I just leave it at that, because actually we need to be much more specific about our goals in education. It's not just about new things. It's about the things we need. It's about thriving. It's about flourishing. It's about, you know, I mean, but I think we need that level of specificity, and not just about new things or solving problems or learning how to learn. That's point one. I think what Francois had to say about the deep roots of education is really important. I've just finished a book called The Future School, which led me to reflect upon the importance of institutions. And by the way, the whole business, you mentioned what's been going on in the US recently, the whole business about respecting institutions and the value that they have for societies is terribly, terribly important. So the idea that everything would just transfer into MOOCs and go online, and the person to person, the community creation of shared goals, and I think it's Geordie who's talking about comm here in the chat, about shared things. Yeah, you can do that to a point online, but I'm a passionate believer in thinking that localities coming together in shared public space, which is a really important function of the university and the school, has got to be reinvented. And as you say, Pavel, not thrown away or not completely transplaced, but evolved. And the evolution has got to be, in my view anyway, this reaching out beyond the silo, which in a sense, Francois, universities have been greater. I mean, you know, you cannot be a technical university these days without multiple partnerships of all sorts. But if we can drive that concept forward into the idea of education is everybody's business, and we have to have these interlocking networks of very diverse partners or stakeholders, I think you call them, Isadora. That for me is the critical thing. The next point is about how do we get it to mass uniqueness? Well, I'm sure Francois is right that the issue of credentialing, and you touched on it too, Pavel, is critical. In our report, what we said in terms of what might, you know, the hallmarks of really successful ecosystems is that they create great platforms, but they also go into the issue of credentialing and assessment. And they find new ways to ensure that what they do is not just a nice parallel, your point, Kate, on the side thing that's going along, but it is actually properly credentials, and that the credentials lock in with standards and ways in which both employment is found and you are genuinely recognized for what you have achieved in a way that people can trust. And this is another meaning of trust, the point that Isadora brought up. The credentialing that goes on must be trusted. It cannot be Mickey Mouse. And if this is sold down the river through soft forms of credentialing, we're in big trouble. So I think that, you know, the inventiveness around innovation in assessment and credentialing is a critical point. And I want to finish, thank you for giving me space. I don't want to take up too much airtime, but I want to go back to what Yannick said about the roots of all of this in capitalism, actually. And for me, I think what could be the urgent driver to something which is renewed and which is much more expansive, generous, engaging for young people and bringing in learners' voices is not the old project of trying to reinvent capitalism. Well, it is a part of that, reinventing capitalism, but it's driven by an overpowering urgency of the climate crisis. Because capitalism is absolutely founded on extractive capitalism. It is its driver, it is its means. And now we are in such an emergency, and it is so well recognized, most of all by young people who are absolutely outraged by the egregious failure of stewardship on our part, that it is that seems to me to be the driver of these new models. And so that kind of both, I mean, it's a paradox, isn't it? Like, it makes me despair because it's so urgent and so serious and so terribly, terribly dangerous. But it also gives me hope, because I think it might be the driving force to bring things together in a way that might just make it work.
Thank you, Valerie. And actually, I'm thinking that in this research that Kate was mentioning that we just accomplished together with WorldSkills, we really saw regenerative economy, the idea of new economy that addresses climate crisis and the sixth extinction risk of the biodiversity loss crisis is really the crucial component of a new emerging economic paradigm. So Kate, over to you. I know you have some remarks.
Yeah, I just wanted to make really short comment that's for the beginning, I think we should stop adding some kind of the emotional coloring to the different words. Because, you know, it sounds like when we say trust, we mean something beautiful and positive in any way, you know, and when you say standard, it almost like you can feel that something big and dark, you know, and like really not creative and so on. But it's just words, and actually how we use it and for what purpose, it really matters. For instance, like as my past as a consultant kind of for the different companies, I saw it so many times, you know, when companies start, when it's a startup, it always builds on trust. because 2 or 3 or 4 creative young guys trying to create something from the zero. Usually it's a disruptive innovation. So they're always innovative, and their cooperation, their work always built on trust. But then when the company succeeded and started to grow and grow and grow, and suddenly it's 30 people, then 300 and 3,000, and they always struggle with the desire to continue having it built on trust, but in some moment it's not possible anymore because too many people involved, and these people require rules and guidance and standards and code of ethics and stuff like this. And if they would, so basically it's just evolvement of the different practices. So I think we, now speaking from kind of with my head, from the world skills, from the practical point of view, we also trying to implement tools as a skills passport, you know, when the trust have different meaning, when you continue your competition and you receive the skills passport, when your skills are kind of visually represented by modules and so on and so on. And the industry representative, the employers trust the skills passport. But the funny thing that they trust it because it's built on transparent standards, because they know how the process works, and because it can be spreaded and implemented into so many different areas and so on and so on. So I think even Pavel, back to our work with you, it's our kind of job now to think how we can implement the best of the learning ecosystem and the best of the green skills approach and so on into the existing skills, into the existing occupation, to the existing learning approaches to actually have a chance to make it better, again, massively, not just for kind of 10 lucky guys.
Thank you. And I cannot help but think that we are the key revolution in transforming the systems of education that should be happening right now is actually the evolution of assessment, including all kinds of digital tools that are becoming available to us. Because, for example, Google and Facebook create comprehensive models of human beings that are far more efficient in predicting the behavior of human beings than any school assessment systems. And right now, but they only use it for a single purpose of selling us different marketing stuff, so to say, feeding us targeted marketing. This is not the right way of using this kind of technology. We can do so much by helping every human being develop and flourish, indeed, with the tools that are already available to us. So the assessment revolution is so much needed, and we already can start accomplishing it. Jordi, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Pavel. Yeah, that's a lot of open bubbles of discussions. I think Valerie did a great journey with all gathering. I just want to stop in one place. I think this was part of our discussion. We need to really think when we talk about the transition about the power discussion, how power is distributed in our systems, and what is the power, what is the form of the power in our learning ecosystems transitions that we are sharing. I just want to stop in one space because I think it's quite a big part of the story for me in my experience related to learning ecosystems. That is this idea that you shared around mass and uniqueness. I think that the decentralization of our systems are part of the discussion between what Francois just shared about how the discussion between the old and the new paradigms. So the decentralization and giving voice and choice to the uniqueness of how individuals grow anywhere in the world, and how the uniqueness also of organizations, that is people working together, and how these people has, again, voice and choice to choose and transform the ways they are driving their lives and their organizations, and what the purpose is part of what needs to, or what is guiding already this change. So how we embrace a collective purpose, and how uniqueness is empowered to be the voice that really show us where the standards need to be. So I think that's an interesting point. So the power story, and also the the uniqueness as the flourishment space for learning ecosystems.
Thank you. We have a few minutes remaining, so I think we have, let's say, an open microphone now for some of the closing remarks. I can see, Yannick, you were highlighting this idea also of a decentralization that sort of emphasizes your point that we really need to move to a new paradigm that is much more network-based. And we did indeed discuss this dream, so to say, a number of times, that learning ecosystem can become these localized hubs of new model of economy and society connecting with each other. And sometimes they say, imagine ourselves in the body of a caterpillar becoming butterfly.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jordi, for bringing up the issue of power, because maybe we need to ask the question if we can really advance this paradigm shift without without considering the issue of cognitive justice, which is basically related to power, so cognitive justice. So, and now going back to Valerie's point, so maybe we don't need to reinvent capitalism, but we need to engage in the discussion at least about the relationship between the different type of learning ecosystem and how we can advance them within the economic system we live in. Well, when we talk about capitalism, we all know there is not one capitalism. You have varieties of capitalism. So and also at least, so that shows that at least we can engage in the discussion. And if the goal is to set up learning ecosystems so that young people, so that adults, everyone can flourish. So the issue of value generation is essential. Even before talking about value extraction, because before extracting the value, we need to generate the value. And our ideas on that, as we discussed, is that maybe we can, at least in the African context, since we basically have the chance here, right? It's a chance that to be able to have a new, to try to realize a new type of bottom-up organizations, because anyway the large-scale industrialization has not been done. It's not successful. Actually, since 50 years, and the people, our colleagues here from the IFD, have been trying with many other big partners to industrialize on large scale, but it's not working. So the question nowadays we can ask, okay, what is not working? What's this large scale industrialization not working in the African context? Maybe we can ask that question and see if some other paradigms might work. And our work at Kabako is actually to set up learning and environment learning, so to advocate for learning ecosystem, which might lead to a new type of economic life, which is more holistic, which is more interconnected. So you and me and you and the nature, me and the nature, and so on. So thanks again to everyone. I really enjoyed the discussion. I learned a lot from listening to all the ideas, and I do see that we share some common challenges, but what I really see and what make me even more confident in the future is that we share some common values and trust. And I'm really positive that we will be able to advance that paradigm. Thank you.
If I can just one word, Pavel, thank you so much to all, because it was really I learned a lot, so thank you very much for that. It was really and I just wanted to maybe by saying that what gives me hope is that, as you were saying, the young generation are in great needs of that kind of approach. And if I agree with you that institutions are key in this process, yet they may be willing to learn how to listen. I won't say to their customers, but Francois, what you were saying about the student from China who was asking the university to get rid of the boring teachers, I think maybe it's just a question of learning how to listen to the people that we are supposed to serve. So maybe that, there's hope, because the young generation, they're coming and they're asking us to take our responsibility and to save their purpose, which is to stay alive in a way. So it's good news.
Beautiful remark, Isadora. And yesterday we had a conversation around the topic, how can next generation engage in co-creating the future? And indeed, we see that it should start, but you were talking about the issue of power, by recognizing that we need to start empowering learners indeed. And they do know what they want quite often better than adults. And so there is a chance, there's an invitation. Francois, you wanted also to say something. We have
yes,
already running 1 minute behind, but let's make the final
and it's an invitation, because clearly we obviously want to talk more about this, and I'm sure we're not the only ones in the world. There's many more. There'll be many chances, and I'm sure that Learning Planet will go on to great things. With Olivier, who we crossed paths with in Paris just a few weeks ago. One of the ideas is to invite you all in a virtual way to Geneva in a couple of months' time to continue part of this dialogue in something called the Geneva Trialogue, which is between the education sector, the international organizations, and the private sector, something we've been doing every 2 years for a while now. And building again on Valerie's excellent point, I think for me, it's really important to emphasize this. It's not just about how we learn, but what we learn and why we learn it. And the SDGs indeed do provide a framework, not a perfect one. There's many problems with them, but perhaps one of the best we have at the moment for thinking about that issue of how to channel challenge-based learning towards solving the world's problems. So I hope we can meet again in Geneva as a stepping stone to greater things with Learning Planet.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for this exciting discussion and conversation. We really, so to say, just scratching the surface of a very interesting process that is happening, but I think still quite a lot of learning. And a big thing is for me is this recognition that there are many more learning ecosystems in the world that we probably can recognize. They just need to awaken to the fact that they are learning ecosystems, like the case of Eloise and her project. So really there is this movement happening, and let's help amplify it. Thank you to all of you for this wonderful discussion. Let's stay in touch and learn about each other's work. Bye-bye.